What I find absolutely fascinating is how different brands are perceived these days, car manufacturers. In other words, manufacturers that many years ago we might have poo-pooed a little bit now seem to be moving up in their status in the world, especially when it comes to EVs. I mean, 15 years ago, would you have considered something like a Hyundai or a Kia against a BMW or a Mercedes-Benz or Audi? Whereas nowadays, not only are you considering them, not only are they the same sort of like price as BMW, Audi and Mercedes, but in some respects, they're better cars. And then of course you've got all the kind of new startups that have arrived on the scene, especially again in the EV world. Rivian, Lucid, Polestar, Genesis, and of course Tesla, because let's be honest, they are the original kind of Kickstarter, if you like, the startup tech company that all of a sudden now is producing one of the best selling cars in the world. And dare I suggest, a bit of a benchmark car. But there is another, and it's a new company that's been around for a little while, not producing cars for that long, but they are about to embark on their very ambitious growth plan, and we're about to see their third new product launch in the UK in less than 12 months. And with this one, they are taking aim at that benchmark car, the Tesla Model 3. And that company is BYD, as they are now on their third new product launch in the UK in 2023. And this one could be the most impressive of them all. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the new BYD Seal. And of course, as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before we get started on this week's road test review of BYD's new Seal, it is of course that time where I ask you to make sure that you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you've pressed the little bell button down below, because then that way you'll get a notification when our next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you've watched it, if you have enjoyed it, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget, leave us your comments down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on the cars that I review, such as the new BYD Seal, and of course, on the AutoEV channel as a whole. A couple of little housekeeping rules before we get started. If you're hearing a bit of an echo, it's because I'm actually inside a showroom, really. But don't think this is a sneak peek. I'm driving the car here. I'm at the BYD Dynamic launch, the BYD Seal Dynamic launch here in the UK, and it's up in the Lake District in November. And as you can see, it's lashing down. So luckily, I've got a car inside, so I can show you around the externals of the car. But then we'll also be taking one out for a drive, and also be driving it on track as well, because I'm up at actually M Sport in Cockermouth, so we've got a track facility here as well. So that should be a bit of fun, especially on a day like today. Right, BYD Seal, what is it? Okay, well, as I say, the car's been available in China. Of course, it's BYD, build your dreams. They're new to the UK, but they're not a new company as such. But to give you sort of like a little bit of a history with them, they started off life as a battery, an electrical component manufacturer. They're the world's largest manufacturer of rechargeable batteries. Interestingly, half of all iPads sold in the world today use a BYD battery in it, believe it or not. But they've been building cars since 2003, 2004. But they only came to the UK this year, and already we've seen two quite impressive cars from them. The ATTO 3, which is a compact crossover that goes up against things like the MG ZS and Kia Niro. And then there was the Dolphin, the small sort of like 5-door, well, I say small, it's quite big in fairness inside, but it goes up against things like the ID3, Renault Megane E-Tech, Peugeot E308, that type of car, a C-Sector 5-door hatch. But it's this car that I've been really waiting to get my hands on, because they say this is the car that's going to go into, well, quite a tight little market space. It's the compact executive sports saloon that already sees things such as obviously the Tesla Model 3, the BMW i4, the Polestar 2, Hyundai's Ioniq 6, and of course we're about to see Volkswagen's ID7. So there's some big names that it's going up against, and some really impressive talent. And whilst we've not exactly been blown away by BYD's products so far, they have been very good. There's a lot to like about them. But I have a funny feeling this one could be the one that's going to really put the cat amongst the pigeons. But before we move on, as always, let's take a little look at the main points about the new BYD Seal. Well, like I say, it's a compact sports saloon designed to compete with cars such as the Tesla Model 3, Polestar 2 and BMW i4. It sits on the company's dedicated EV architecture, the E-Platform 3.0, and uses their innovative blade battery to maximise density whilst being as compact and as safe as possible. It's going to be available in two models initially, the single motor design and then the dual motor excellence. Both models come with the same 82.5 kilowatt hour battery, delivering ranges between 323 and 354 miles on the combined WLTP cycle. And prices in the UK start at £45,695 for the design and top out at £48,695 for the excellence. So impressive numbers, but big ambitions for what is a relatively new company. And as I say, they're going up against some really quite impressive talent in this market sector. Are they going to succeed? Well, of course, the only way that we're going to find out is by putting the car through the actual road test that car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that is the AutoEV one. Now, when it comes to design, I've always been a bit nonplussed about BYD's efforts so far. The ATTO 3 is all right. It's a decent enough looking thing, but it is what it is. It's just a 5-door kind of compact crossover. The Dolphin I was a bit meh about. The Seal, however, wow, love the look of this car. I think it's a really impressive looking car. But of course, style is quite important in this marketplace, and you've got to look at the cars that's already in there. The Polestar 2, the BMW i4, look at the Hyundai Ioniq 6. Even Tesla, a car that I've been really berating the styling of, they've updated it. By the way, we're going to be road testing the new Tesla Model 3 in a couple of weeks, so make sure you are subscribed for that one. But as I say, I've always kind of berated it for looking a little bit bland in what is quite a style-led marketplace. This is a great looking effort, I think, from BYD. It's the work of a man called Thomas Egger. Now, if you're not familiar with his work, you've got an impressive CV to look at. He was headed up, and he took over from Walter de Silva at Seat and Audi as well. He's also the man that designed the Alfa Romeo 8C Competizione. So that's a pretty impressive resume as far as I'm concerned. But I think this is a phenomenally good looking car, I really do. And it's different enough, it stands out in the marketplace while looking like it belongs in the marketplace, if that makes sense. Okay, well, let's start with the front end, which is a very kind of low front end. The lowest that he was able to get it, even to meet sort of like with NCAP safety regulations. So it's a nice low drooping front end. There's a little bit of Porsche Taycan about the front, almost. You can kind of just see it slightly. These beautiful swept-backed headlamps, these little DRLs here. But look at this lovely light signature here, this kind of arrow shape here. And you'll see the arrow on another place of the car as well. The BYD badge is now kind of sunk into the kind of front nose cone again, giving it a much more kind of sophisticated kind of look than maybe some of the earlier cars. Obviously, you've got this kind of smoothed over frontal area, but of course, all your cooling's done down at the bottom there. As you can see, there's quite a few cars in here. As I say, we'll go through trim and design later, but in terms of being outwardly visible, there's not really a lot of differentiation between the two models, between the design and the excellence, which might be helpful when you're choosing your car. In terms of how the car actually looks. You're not going to have a massive sort of like difference between the two models. But I really think they're off to a great start with the sort of like the front aspect of this vehicle. Now, as you move down the side profile of the car, you can see it's more kind of rounded, a bit like the Tesla Model 3. They've gone for that aero kind of efficiency, like the Tesla, rather than a kind of very straight edge kind of Scandi look of the Polestar 2, and almost the kind of slightly fussy, more traditional looking BMW i4. And it's maybe not as controversial as something like the Ioniq 6 from Hyundai. And it certainly stands out more than, dare I suggest, the blandness of Volkswagen's ID7. But I'm digressing a little bit. Right, there's a lot of interesting work down the side of the car, and I say it makes it much more visually appealing to me than the Tesla, even the facelifted car. This is this arrow thing I was talking about here. It looks like this. It is just a piece of trim. It serves no purpose other than to be sort of like an arrowhead, and it's just this BYD design on it. But then you've got the sharp line here, like it's almost been fired from the bow, to give the idea of tension and to give the idea of sort of like forward motion. I think that's a really neat trick. The line just kind of sweeps back through the door and then drops off a little bit here. Again, you've got this kind of slightly sweeping line up and through the front sill, the side sill, and then some nice kind of just different kind of detailing on the side sills, this black side sill down at the side there, which is quite interesting, gives it a bit more kind of visual appealment. Flush door handles that pop out obviously when you need to use them. Both cars get 19-inch wheels as standard as well, so that's an interesting fact. As I say, there's no sort of like difference in terms of the tyre sizes or wheel sizes when you, depending on model. Obviously, your privacy glass at the back and your charging flap mounted nice and neatly on the driver's side at the rear of the car. As I say, visually appealing, not too controversial, but enough detail to give it a real sort of like head start over something, dare I suggest, slightly as bland as Tesla. Now you can see the aero kind of work at the rear of the car here. So you've got this kind of swooping back into this kind of short stubby bootlet, very reminiscent of the Model 3. It is like the Model 3, a booted saloon. So it's not a hatchback, you know, so it's like the Model 3 or the Ioniq 6. It doesn't have a liftback style. The lights aren't on in this particular one for some reason, but I'll show you B-roll of the other cars that are here. But again, really nice kind of light signature you've got coming round here, and then obviously another light bar that goes through there. Your BYD Seal, there's no build your dreams across the back. Now what's really interesting about BYD is they do listen to feedback. They're really they think this is a really important thing. They're listening to customers, they're listening to the dealers. And the Europeans are saying some of the kind of stuff that's on the cars isn't really appealing to them, such as the big lettering across the backs. The European cars don't get it. There's also another little change just round about this kind of rear quarter light as well. They had little chrome water droplets on the Chinese cars. The European cars don't get that, which is nice. As I say, you've just got your BYD seal there, and a really interesting little badge here on this particular car that just says 3.8S. Any idea what that stands for? If you guessed it's 0 to 60 time, you're right. So the models at the back, rather than have the model designation, have the 0 to 60 times there. I think that's quite a quirky little Easter egg there, and I quite like that. Down at the bottom, plus it also shows you your intent. If you pull it behind one of these in your Porsche Boxster, you know not to mess with it. Anyway, down at the bottom you've got this kind of usual kind of blacked out diffuser area here with the kind of vanes there and just a couple of different kind of lights in there. Low set number plate. Boot lid release is a button there, but it's an electronic boot as well, so we'll show that in a second, and a nice little embedded camera. Right, what do we think? Okay, in my opinion, and it is that, this is a good looking car. It's just right. There's enough visual interest here that makes you kind of stand and look at it, but it's not fussy like maybe the BMW i4. It's maybe not as controversial as the Hyundai Ioniq 6, but it's more interesting in the blandness that is the Model 3. Now, as I say, there is a facelifted Model 3 coming, and I do prefer the design of that car over the previous one, but I think this and the Polestar 2 are the two cars I think that really do kind of stand apart in the class. But what do you think? I mean, as I say, that's my opinion. You guys are the guys that are buying this. What do you think about it? Is it tempting enough for you? Is it just right? As always, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Now, you've got 400 litres of boot space on offer. You've got the electronic release, which is this button here. You press that. It takes its time, but it gets there. Moves up. There we go. 400 litres on a par for class. Your limiting factor is, of course, you've got sort of like that kind of aperture to get loads through, so you can't get any big awkward boxes in there. Not like you can, sort of like, you know, sort of like the lift back, say the Polestar or the BMW. But it's all right. It's on a par, as I say, with the rest of the class, the Tesla and the Hyundai. You've also got a 40-60 split rear seat as well, but there's no load through facility. And when you do knock the rear seat down, the seat belt, which is anchored into the rear parcel shelf there, so you've got that limits you as well when you put the seat down. But that's, other than that, that's fine. There's some good underfloor storage, however. All your cables go in here, so all your cable bags are nice and neatly underneath the boot floor as well. Also, which we'll talk about in the usability section, you get vehicle to load with the car, and I've never seen that before. Look, you get an extension cable with it, so your vehicle to load socket has 1, 2, 3, 4 plug sockets with it. It's quite a neat thing. Anyway, the other thing with the car, because it sits on a dedicated EV platform, you do, like you get in the Tesla and the Hyundai and the Polestar, have a little bit of space up at the front. Now, that space that you get is 53 litres. Not massive, not as big as the Tesla, but on a par with, say, Polestar and Hyundai's single motor Ioniq 6. And it doesn't change whether it's the single motor car or the dual motor car. Now, that's it there, 53 litres. It's also nicely packaged, in fairness. It's really nicely finished off in here. But that space is enough for, say, my camera bag, plus a bit more, probably a jacket or something like that. So again, it just gives a little bit more practicality than maybe you would get with some other cars in its class. Rear accommodation. Well, I spent last night and this morning being chauffeur driven in one of these, and I have to say, it's excellent back here. There's a load of space. There's real big lounging space. The only one thing I will say is when I've got the seat set for my driving position, there's a I can't get my feet underneath the front of my seat, but that's my driving position. But in fairness, it's not like the footwell is tight at all. So unless you're sitting behind a 6'5" driver that loves to sit on the floor, there's going to be enough space for you back here. This is a really commodious rear for the car. So good leg space, good foot space, flat floor across, because as I say, it's dedicated EV platform, so you've got completely flat floor across. 3 people across the back will not be an issue. You have this vast panoramic glass roof. Now again, standard on both cars. And like Tesla, it goes all the way back, so it's actually behind your head before it sort of hits the structure of the car. So, you know, again, there's enough headroom for me at kind of 5'8". Maybe if you're 6 foot or over that, you might just be starting to feel a little bit close to that. And the only other thing I will say is, I'm sure it probably has some kind of form of sun dim protection thing on it. There's no blind across it. So if you're watching this and say hotter climes than we've got today in the Lake District, for instance, just watch that because of sunlight, because there's no blind that grows across and it doesn't go kind of clear and opaque like you get on the new Renault Scenic, for instance. But even so, it floods the cabin in with light. You get a couple of choices of interior colours as well. This is the light grey, but it's quite nice in the black as well. It's kind of really kind of makes it look quite kind of sophisticated inside, but it doesn't feel too claustrophobic because you've got this huge roof. Right, there we go. Connectivity, yeah, you do. There's a little flap that folds down there, and you've got USB A and C. You've got a tiny little tray. It's probably enough to take a small mobile in there. You've also got mobile kind of phone pockets in there, plus a lower pocket on the backs of the front seats. Door bins, they're all right. You will get a water bottle in them, although they're quite kind of plasticky on the kind of side, so you maybe get things that rattle around. But then you do have this fold down armrest, which has 2 cup holders in here that are rubber lined on the bottom. The ISOFIX points, very, very easy to get to. They're just under these kind of in fact, no, they're kind of rubberized kind of plastic bungs that you just kind of fold out the way when you get your prongs in there. So they're nice and easy to get to. And the general comfort of the seat is very good in the back. So in terms of doing a long distance, or even short distances, 4 adults or a family, there is more than enough room in here, and certainly more than enough comfort. Now I will talk a bit more about the materials when we do the front of the car, but again, I am very impressed with the materials that they've used on the Seal, and there is a massive step up than we saw on the little Dolphin. So yeah, let's jump in the front and see what we think of that. Now immediately you jump up front, and as I say, if you're familiar with other BYD products, you'll see there's commonality, but I feel this is a real step up. And again, it's a bit like the exterior design. They've kind of looked at the marketplace this car's going to be in and gone, we can't get away with kind of substandard materials and design that's too quirky and too kind of, it's going to alienate people. But we still want to retain our kind of individuality in some respects. And I think they've done an absolute blinder in here, I really do. Now, of course, the big dominant thing is this screen here, this 15.6 inch screen. And of course, it does the usual BYD party trick of rotating. Now, the only thing I'll say about this, and some people do like it, I can't really show you the navigation up because we're inside a building and it won't pick up the GPS, you see. I mean, some people like the map being that way, and again, I suppose, depending obviously on what you've been kind of used to with the Polestar and things like that, where it's got that kind of more portrait style of screen, you might prefer that. The only thing I'll say on this, however, is when you're sitting in the driving position, certainly me, it's just then in my eyes, again, that kind of gap. It was like that with the ATTO 3. The gap between this bit here and that is just, I'm noticing that intrudes into it. So for me personally, I prefer the screen in that landscape mode. That's what I will say. But you do, at least you do have the option. And again, you know, it feels well screwed together. It doesn't feel flimsy on that at all. Okay, what do you get? Well, the first thing you notice is that I think the screen's really responsive. I mean, you flick through it, no problem at all. You've got Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, as you'd expect. You've got built-in Spotify, obviously navigation as well. The car, I think the car does get over-the-air updates too. So again, as things become available, they will be updated. You get a BYD Assistant. If you say hi, you know, you can use voice activation as well. I haven't used that a great deal, so I can't really comment on how reliably good it is. But it does have it. In front of you as a driver, you get this 10.25 inch display here. So a bit more kind of standardized information. So you get your speedo on your right, your kilowatts, your state of charge and your energy being used on the left. And then some ancillary information in the middle here, like tyre pressures and state of charge and range to go and things like that. You can scroll through it to give you a trip computer. You can also configure it as well to give you, if you want a more kind of simplified layout, you can do that. So again, it gives you a choice of either simple or classic, depending obviously on what you want to see. 2 wireless charging pads down here, which is quite nice, and then you do get enough kind of physical controls around about this nice little kind of transmission toggle switch, if you like. So you just, it's a little kind of glass switch, not unlike a sort of like a miniaturized kind of Volvo one you get these days, where you just put your foot on it and pull it back, and that's it. Your stop-start button there to turn the car on and off, and then, as I say, some things like auto hold, parking, going into your snow traction control thing there. Modes, I'll talk about them in a second, and then a couple of quick access to ventilation control, so your automatic and your fan speed on and off. Volume control for radio and media there, and as I say, your mode button here with the park button and hazards there. 2 cup holders. I've left my flask and stuff in my car outside, and I'm not going out to get it, but trust me, they'll fit in there. And then you've got a big storage bin down there, which is, I can get my whole arm into almost. Good sized door bins, and a decent sized glove box, which is lined as well, which is quite nice. The door bins aren't, although they're kind of slightly hard, they slightly feel a bit more robust than they felt on some other cars. The steering wheel's a nice size. It's a very similar sort of 3-spoke design we've seen in other BYD product, and again, there's just the right amount of physical controls on the car. So you're kind of driver assistant things on here, so your lane keep assist, your radar guided cruise control, that type of thing. There's also the button on here where you can rotate the screen as well, rather than hit the screen itself. And then over here you've got your mode button, as I say, for adjusting that, and then obviously your Bluetooth and things like that. So all dead easy. And then the door panel, usual suspects, windows, mirror controls, and there's 4 window controls, and a nice, everything's physical buttons, which is nice. There's no haptic, touch sensitive stuff. It's all click, click, click. And talking of that, the quality feels really good. I have to say, in terms of the actual quality of the materials in here, it feels exceptional, and I'd say it's the best BYD product I've sat in. The car feels really on a par with all the other cars in its class. Feels better than Hyundai. The materials used feel better than Hyundai, and I like the Hyundai, but it's a step up from that, and it's a step up from Tesla. It's not quite Polestar BMW, but it's not far off. It's really impressive. Right. Talking of specs, as I say, there's 2 models. There's design and excellence. The design is the single motor car. The excellence is the all-wheel drive dual motor car. The spec is identical, bar the fact that on the all-wheel drive car you get a head-up display. So this vegan leather, the Spotify, the Apple CarPlay, the Android Auto, the pan roof, the heated seats, everything's standard on both cars. The only difference I found on the spec sheet is the excellence gets the head-up display. That's it. So it's a really well thought out range, and in terms of what you get, a standard, you don't have to choose option packs and things, it doesn't cost a huge amount to add on certain things if you want to go for the lower model to gain the better range. It's as well equipped as this car, which I think has to be commended from BYD. But as I say, going back to the actual interior itself, it's a stunning interior in terms of its ease of use, its quality, how it feels. How it will feel after 50,000 miles in 5 years' time, I don't know, but certainly on first acquaintance, as I say, it's the best that BYD have given us so far, and I think this is a really impressive interior for the car. Now, this is quite an interesting thing to see, because this is the E-Platform 3.0, so this is what the car is built around. This is the platform that BYD use, and underneath here, or sort of like within here, this structure, this is its battery, the blade battery. It is part of the structure of the car, which gives the car a huge amount of rigidity, and it makes it feel very safe and secure on the road as well, as we'll find out when we're out driving it. But I wanted to stand here and tell you a little bit more about the battery and in terms of its charging, because it's not often we get the opportunity to see a car without all of its gubbins on. Now, this particular car, or this chassis mock-up, is a dual motor one, so the Excellence, the all-wheel drive car. So you've got the motor mounted at the back, and a motor obviously mounted at the front as well. The battery itself, 82.5 kilowatt hours, and that gives a range of up to 354 miles on a single motor car, or 323 miles on the dual motor car. Charging speeds, well, they're 150 kilowatts, which isn't bad in fairness. And if you're charging from 10 to 80%, BYD say that that should take up to 39 minutes. So a little bit behind the half hour that normally takes things like Polestar, BMW i4 and Tesla, and way behind things like the Hyundai Ioniq 6. But do bear in mind that 18 minutes that Hyundai quote for the Ioniq 6 is if you can max it out at a 350 kilowatt charger. So that's the main thing to understand about that figure that Hyundai quote. In terms of other things, however, you do get a heat pump as standard. Not only that, is the car also comes with an 11 kilowatt onboard charger as standard. So if you do have access to more powerful three-phase electricity, then the car is equipped to take that. If you're charging up from your 7 kilowatt wall box, which is more likely one that you'll have, then you're looking at around about 13 and a bit hours to charge from flat to full. The other thing, as I say, the car comes with, which more and more of its competitors are coming with, is of course vehicle to load as well. Okie doke. Now, I'm now out on the roads of Cumbria, the Lake District, which is lovely, very nice. Two models, as I say, so single motor car with 308 brake horsepower, which will do the 0 to 60 time in about 5.9 seconds. This car is the all-wheel drive car, so this gets 523 brake horsepower, and that gives a Tesla rivaling 0 to 60 time of 3.8 seconds on the car. Now, the dual motor car isn't a massive step up in terms of price over the single motor car. And in terms of the economy, I'm going to talk about all that beeping in a second. And in terms of obviously the range and stuff, then obviously there's, there's not a massive difference. What I'm trying to say is it's going to kind of really depend how you feel. Whether that extra like £3,000 for all of that extra performance is worth the sacrifice of like a 20-mile range potentially. I have a sneaking suspicion, I haven't driven the rear-wheel drive car yet, the single motor one, but I have a sneaking suspicion that the all-wheel drive car might be the pick of the range in fairness, because it does feel very secure on the road. Now it does that through a thing called ITAC, which is Intelligent Torque Adaptive Control or something like that. In other words, it will push power more to the front if it feels it needs it, if it's in terms of the car's state, what's happening with it, it will do that. It feels very secure on the road. Now you've got double wishbone suspension up at front and a multi-link suspension at the rear end. And it all adds up to be a car that is well planted. On these kind of, especially today, on these kind of, horrible rain-strewn roads that we've got around here. There really is quite a nice sort of, security that you feel with the car as you're driving it along. There's a lot you can change with the car, however, and that's both good and bad. And the reason I'm saying that is a lot of it is kind of buried in here in this screen. So whilst you've got your mode button down here, so you flick between Eco, if I press Eco, oh, hang on, Eco, and everything's just now kind of all dulled back and it's all a bit lifeless almost. And then from there we go to normal, which feels a lot better. It feels, dare I suggest, well, normal really. There's a nice kind of, a nice throttle response. You stand on the brakes, you've got that retardation that you feel through it. And then you go to sport. Yeah, what I'll say about sport is, whilst you do feel the power and it doesn't feel out of control, as you push down on the throttle, let me just do that again, I've got that right. It kind of thinks about it, then it does it, which is a bit odd. It doesn't just immediately snap. Some people might like that, in the fact that it's not that neck snapping sort of like response that you get with sort of like some cars, Tesla for instance. But it just doesn't feel like it's kind of responding enough. It doesn't feel quite sharp enough. It doesn't feel like it needs to, it just, you know, when it does, it's kind of like it thinks about it, then it does it. I'd quite like a little bit more. So in other words, it doesn't feel natural, is what I'm trying to say very badly. It doesn't feel like a real kind of natural progressive throttle pedal. That's something I think you'd have to get used to. The other thing that you have to get used to is not really having enough adjustability in the brakes. So whilst there is brake regeneration, you have to delve into this screen to get it. Which, you know, it's not the end of the world, and there's a lot of things now that you do get on screens, but it's buried in this menu system. And that's my other criticism of the car in total, is there is a huge amount of things just buried in screens, in this screen. Heated seats, the three steps away to get to your heated seat button. Why have we got, you know, 3 steps to get to like heated seats? You know, that's a bit crazy, you know. Now let me just get where I'm going here, because oddly these cars that we're driving today have got the indicators and wipers round the wrong way, and I don't need that on a day like today, but at least they do have column stocks. Hey Tesla, there we go. Right, what else are we going to talk about? Okay, so that's my first real kind of gripe, is that there's just a lot of the things that you might need access to while you're driving is buried in this screen. Now, it's quite a slick screen, in fairness. You know, when you go into it, you know, you go into home. So there we go. So I'm on navigation. So I go home, car, where is it? It's down here. Vehicle settings, seats, heated seat. So that was home, vehicle settings, seats. So 3 stages to get to switch my heated seat on. It's too much. It's just too much. Then to go back to navigation, I've got to press home, navigation. So another 2 steps to go back to navigation. So that's my problem. And it's the same with the brake regen. You can either have it high or low. And in high regen, and again it's through the screen, and again in high regenerative mode, it's certainly not one pedal driving. So if you, I mean, I don't mind that. I don't mind the fact that I have to use the pedal to brake, because that's how I've always driven. I'm not a massive, I'm not saying I'm a massive fan of one pedal driving. It's just not, it's not the be all and end all to me. But again, it's just, if you are, why does it have to be so complicated to find it? That's my point. Excuse me, I beg your pardon. You can change the performance of the, you can change the weight of the steering and the brakes. So you know, even in the different driving modes, you can still go into like a sportier steering setup, or a more comfort orientated steering setup, depending obviously on what you want. So that's quite nice that you have that level of adjustability, and you can tailor the car really how you want it. But there doesn't seem to be a mode where you could, I mean, okay, it stays in those modes, but there doesn't seem to be like a one button mode where you can set it up how you like it, you know, like a personal mode that you just press and that's it in there. So again, it's not perfect, is what I'm trying to say. It is not perfect, but it is nice. It is very good. The general drive of the car is very good. The level of chassis adjustability, and I'm going to be driving it on track as well today, although not a racetrack. It's a proving ground type of track that we're up here in the Lake District. So there is a level of adjustability in the chassis, which is quite nice. But in terms of just being out on these open roads, there's got a really nice balance between road holding, grip, and suspension comfort, which is quite nice. And as I say, when you've got it in the sport setting, the steering has a really nice kind of weight to it. You know, I mean, okay, these aren't the kind of twisty roads I'm on at the moment, but you know, sort of like coming alongside with more kind of sweeping bends, you know, it's not overtly light. That's what I'm trying to say. They've got a really nice, just off the dead ahead, you can feel the steering just kind of weight up a little bit, which is quite nice. It gives you a little bit of feedback, and you know that something's happening underneath there. Driving position is excellent. Driving position is very, very good. The seats are nice. They've got some nice lateral support. They're not the best in class. but they're certainly nicer than, say, like the Teslas. And I always find the Teslas not particularly supportive. You tend to roll in and out of the Teslas. Certainly the current Model 3, I find. You know, that's what Polestar and BMW do far better, in my opinion. These are probably on a par with, say, like the Hyundai Ioniq 6. You know, they've just got the right kind of blend of comfort and you know, sort of like holding you in place, which is quite nice. Refinement's okay. Refinement's very good. I wouldn't say there's an overt amount of wind noise or road noise coming from the tyres, which is nice. It's better suppressed than it is in the Dolphin. I found that actually as you kind of up the speed in the Dolphin, the refinement just kind of fell away. You don't have that here. Gosh, this is a beautiful part of the country. If you're up to Lake District, we're in round about sort of like Keswick and Cockermouth area around here. This is a stunning part of the world, it really is. Anyway, I'm digressing off there. I think what I'm trying to say is this. This is a really good car. It's a really good effort. It's not flawless. There are elements of it that I am finding a little bit infuriating. It tends to be centred around the fact that you've got to delve into the screen to do things. As I say, in terms of setting the car up into the different modes, yes, they're there. Some feel better than others. There isn't the consistency of control weights between the different modes. I find, as I say, in sport mode, it's just almost, as I say, a slightly artificial feel to the throttle, whilst the brake pedal has a nice feel to it, if that makes sense. I think the chassis balance, certainly on the road, is good. The levels of grip, good. The level of performance, good. So there's more positives than there are negatives with the car. Is it the best in class? Well, of course, I'm probably going to have to wait to put it up against the other cars. And as I say, I don't want to say anything yet until I've driven the new Model 3. But what I will say is this. It's probably no, it's not probably, it is. I would say this is BYD's best effort yet. There is more to like and maybe even love about this car than there is with the ATTO 3 and the Dolphin. And the market that it's going into, in terms of the competition it's going to face, it has to be that good. Refinement is all right. There's a relative lack of wind noise from the car, and on smooth surfaces, road noise is all right. When you get to slightly harsher surfaces, there's a bit of a resonance comes up through the car that you don't get from things like, you know, the Tesla Model 3, the Polestar 2, the BMW i4. So that's one area that they might just need to concentrate on. Now, it could be the tyres, I'm not sure. You know, if there's a different spec of tyre available, that might make a bit of a difference. But as I say, there's just a tiny little bit of resonance when you are on harsher surfaces that you don't get when the road is nice and kind of smooth. The chassis balance is very good. I mean, I'm on a really twisty bit of road now, and what I will say is that it's coping admirably, and actually it feels very sure-footed. There's, you know, so, you know, in terms of the tyres, they are giving a nice level of grip, especially today. Now that's, you know, maybe to do with that intelligent torque control that's moving sort of like, you know, everything kind of around and just making sure that there's enough grip where it needs to be. But, you know, I'm carrying a little bit of speed down these roads, and as I say, the weather is biblically bad today, but gosh, it's quite impressive. Now, pricing. I think this is quite interesting where they've positioned this car in terms of its price. There's two models, as I say. There's the single motor design, and that starts the range off at £45,695. Now, that is more than you will pay for a single motor standard range Tesla Model 3 in the UK as we film. But bear in mind that the Seal gets no options available. In other words, I think there's a couple of paint options, but that's it. Most of the colours are standard. You know, sort of like the vegan leather and all the rest of the gubbins and all the rest of it, that's all standard on the car. So in terms of value for money, think about that rather than actual cost. But it is more than the base model Teslas. However, if you go to the all-wheel drive Excellence, that's £48,695, which is less than Tesla charge for the dual motor long range Model 3. So BYD have positioned it sort of in the middle of where Tesla's two models are, with not a massive price difference between the two trim levels. And as I say, bear in mind, in terms of the equipment, the only thing I can find difference, other than the performance and obviously the range, is you get a head-up display in the Excellence model. Now, bear in mind as well, these prices are correct at time of filming. So if you are watching in the future, as of November 2023, that's the price of the car, okay? Warranty, well, it's a 6-year warranty. You get the standard 8-year on the battery, as you do with most of these cars, but the actual car warranty itself, bumper to bumper, is a 6-year warranty. I think it's pretty decent value for money, and it's exactly where the market is for this style of car. And as I say, it is a good car. The quality is there. The one thing that really has impressed me away from the design of the car is the quality that I've seen today. And of course, we're now on to the competition, which, well, I've mentioned pretty much most of them throughout the road test review. The Tesla Model 3 is the biggest competitor for the car that you're going to see. And it's the car that I think it really does take aim at. If you look at the design, the shape, the pricing, the equipment, the range, and all that type of thing, it's the Tesla Model 3 is going to be the main rival for the car. But of course, that's not our favourite car in the class, because we think the Polestar 2 is a better car. As I say, admittedly, I've not driven the new Model 3 yet. I'll do that in a couple of weeks' time. But at the moment, the Polestar 2 is our favourite. And of course, that is going to be a competitor for this car as well. As is the BMW i4, as I say. You know, you've got car companies such as BYD, which maybe in the UK, a lot of people maybe still haven't heard of, taking aim at BMW. It's impressive and it's ambitious, but you know, that's a competitor for it. Hyundai's Ioniq 6. Now, the real kind of style, the real kind of love it or loathe the Ioniq 6. And of course, with the Hyundai, we've come to expect, you know, good range, good efficiency, excellent charging, you know, as you'd expect from them, not to mention, you know, good after sales care from the Hyundai dealers as well. So again, with their plans for expansion within the UK with their dealerships, they were talking last night of within 2024, another 60 dealers coming online within the UK. That's impressive growth. So they are going to become a real sort of like common feature, I think, around about our city streets as we move forward. Last but not least, there's also the Volkswagen ID.7. Now, it's a car we've done a sneak peek on, but we've yet to drive the car. The launch, I think, is starting sort of like round about now, the international launch. Hopefully we'll get to drive it at some point early part of next year. But that's Volkswagen sort of like entrant into this sort of like, you know, sort of like, I won't say compact, but that kind of sort of like, you know, saloon style of market with its ID.7. So that's another one that you're going to have to consider. And I'm sure they certainly won't be the last as we move forward towards full electrification. So here's what we like and what we don't like about the BYD Seal. Well, we like its styling. It's high leveled of standard equipment. The sure-footed chassis dynamics. Its comfort. And it has a good warranty package. We don't like, well, there are some small inconsistencies within some of the main driving controls. There are too many functions that you require quick access to, buried in the screen. There's a slightly higher level of road noise on harsher surfaces. And of course, it does have a higher starting price than the ubiquitous Tesla Model 3. 3 product launches within 12 months in the UK market. Now, I sometimes get in trouble when I talk about BYD as being the biggest car company you've never heard of with some of you guys out there, because I keep forgetting, of course, they've been established in other markets for quite some time now. But here in the UK, that's an impressive tally. They have come into this UK market in 2023, and this is the 3rd product launch that we've seen from them. So in some respects to our UK market, they are very, very new, and they have got, dare I suggest, maybe a little bit of way to go in establishing themselves as a manufacturer. Those products maybe should have done that, and in some respects they have. The ATTO 3 is a good car. It's a sort of well-rounded, get on with the job, no kind of nonsense family car. It's going to appeal to people that just want that car to do that job. The Dolphin, it's all right. It kind of wasn't up to class best in my opinion. As I said, it was a car that would be bought on affordability rather than desirability. But that's not to take anything away from it, because it was a nice little pleasant car to drive. But that's not the same with this, with the Seal. You see, the marketplace that the Seal is aiming at already has brands which are bought on desirability. BMW, Polestar, Tesla, even Hyundai now. These cars have already established themselves at a level, and BYD cannot afford to come in underneath that level. They've got to meet that standard. And this is the car that does exactly that. It is a car that has gone into a very competitive marketplace with some very big established brand names that we in the UK see as very desirable. And it has put its stake on the ground and firmly claimed its share of this market. This is by far BYD's best product that's on sale now, and woe betide you if you don't take notice of this, because if you don't, you're missing out on something that is clearly very good indeed. Thank you for watching yet another episode of AutoEV. As always, please make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Then once you've done that, make sure you press the little bell button down below, because in that way you get a notification of when our next video is uploaded and is gone live. If you've enjoyed the video, then please make sure you give it a thumbs up, and don't forget, leave us your comments down below as well. Let me know what your thoughts are on the new BYD Seal. Is this a car that's really turned your head? Would you be interested in it? Would you walk past a Tesla showroom to buy one of these, or even a Polestar or a BMW showroom to go and buy yourself a BYD Seal? Have you got one on order? As always, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comment section. Now remember, we're across all social media platforms as well. So Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn. So please give us a follow there, because that helps the channel too. And if maybe this is your first time you've tuned into the AutoEV channel and you're wondering what we're about, well, stay on the channel, because as I say, there's not just road test reviews there. There's twin tests, used car buying advice, van reviews, motorbike reviews, even an electric icon series. All that remains for me to say is thank you once again for watching. Thank you for your continued support by watching the channel. I'll see you again soon.